Hello there and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about developing Xsplit Broadcaster extensions and source plugins. We're gonna go over a few things, and of course this is a 6,000 level course, so you should really have seen all my other tutorials, the earlier tutorials, or be very familiar with Xsplit Broadcaster before watching this one. You should also have some prerequisite knowledge about basic programming, web development. We'll go through the Hello world for both extensions and plugins. We'll also take a look at an extension and source I'm developing to give you some ideas about what you can do with it. I will have links to all resources and references down in the description below so you can follow along. And of course, my GitHub repo is linked below. With the pleasantries out of the way, let's get started. There's a couple of things that you're gonna need before we start developing today. You need a copy of Xsplit Broadcaster installed on your machine. Otherwise, what we're doing, you won't be able to test it or run it, so Number two, you're gonna need an IDE of some kind. I recommend VisualStudio Code. It's very robust, very flexible, works with just about everything, and it's free. And now we're ready to start creating a source or an extension. With that, we're gonna jump into the XSplit JS Framework Quick Start Guide and show you exactly what a source and extension is, how they're built, and how they're constructed. After we go over that, I'm gonna show you my extension, so you may get a little inspirato about what you can do with it. So what you're gonna see in the quick start guide is kind of like the basic structure of a source or an extension, depending on the step you're at. And what you see is that it's made up of very few components. So we have an HTML file, a JavaScript file, and a little bit of CSS. So to save you a little bit of time, I do have the Quick Start project created here in Visual Studio Code. So let's just step through that instead of the Quick Start guide. So this is the HTML snippet they give you, and what you see here is very simple. We're referencing a style sheet in our local project. We've got a single div with some content. We reference two script files. The first one here, you'll notice that I'm actually reaching out to this XSplit CDN and downloading a copy from them at runtime. Then I reference a local JavaScript file, which is where all the actual code is. So just from that HTML snippet, you can see exactly how our source is constructed. So let's take a little bit closer look. First, let's look at the CSS file. And we'll see here that all it does is turn the body to transparent and the text to white. So it's easier to see. Now in the JS file, we'll see that we're instantiating an object of the XJS framework, then calling .ready. So basically we need to wait for the framework to initialize, any constructors inside. Once it's ready, we call a then function because the XJS framework is asynchronous, or it supports asynchronous operations, so you'll see a lot of then. Then we attach the event listeners for the stream start and stream end events. Inside of the event listeners, we use some vanilla JavaScript to change the content of that div. So when the stream starts, the div will say stream is live, and then when we kill the stream, it will set it back to stream is not live. Of course, the default content is stream is not live. So let's go ahead and just take a look at that in action. So I've got XSplit loaded up here. Let's add the source. XSplit demo, my source. And you'll see here it says stream is not live. Well, what happens when we stream? Boom. It's live! Ha ha ha! So it's really as simple as that. You'll see that there's not much to it. With this one file, we're able to change some content. Now this is very, very similar to web development. So there are a lot of frameworks and libraries that you can use to make extensions. So that was a very simple example of a source. Now what about an extension? Well, as luck would have it, I have an extension ready to go here too. So now let's scroll down just a little bit to the create your first extension plugin section, and you'll see that the extensions are structured basically the same way as the source plugins. It's a bunch of web components. So we have an HTML file and a JavaScript file. So let's take a look at the project I have set up here for the extension. Now let's start with the HTML file. What you'll see is just a single paragraph tag and two script references. Again, I am downloading the XJS framework at runtime from the CDN directly from XSplit, then referencing on line 10 a main.js file that's here locally. So let's click on the main.js file and see exactly what it does. Much like the source, we instantiate an object of the XJS framework. When it's ready, we return how many scenes are included in the stage. Then we create a for loop to iterate through the count. Now, something odd that you'll see here is that it starts at 1 and goes to count plus 1. This is really weird because most of the time our indices start at 0 and then we go to count -1. But this is actually the example that XSplit themselves gives you, so don't mess with it. As we iterate through that for loop, we create a button for each scene, then some text for the button, put those two together, so put the text in the button, then we add the button to the DOM, and finally we attach an event listener to that button we created. And that event listener will change the active scene that corresponds to the button. So let's go ahead and take a look at it in action. Let's flip back over to XSplit here. Oh, that's Adobe. Now we'll need to add the extension. So we'll click add extension file, navigate to the extension, which this one will be XSplit demo 2, my extension, click open, okay. Now we need to activate it. So you go back to extensions and click my extension. There we go. Now we have scene 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, just the same. So now we can click scene 1. Boom, we're on scene 1. Go to scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. There we go. Finally to scene 5. That was a preview. So you can see this is how simple creating an extension is. Now what I've done with my extension and source actually combines the two. So it actually gives you a way to click buttons on an extension to affect content in your source. So I'm going to close our demo here and bring over my extension. I'm going to go ahead and get the stream started because we will need a stream. So before we get into my extension source combo, let's actually just take a look and see what it is. So we'll load up the extension here. It's called Select a Chat. I am streaming right now. Of course, it's unlisted, but this is my chat, and this is what my extension does. So, hello world. There we go. You see that it popped up with my name. I clicked add, and it added that comment to the stream. So I can remove it here, I can add it, remove it. So if somebody said something clever like, oh, AJ Mantech, you are the best in the world, exclamation point. Bam, there we go. Oh, yeah, I have to respond to this viewer, right? I mean, Aaron Martin, oh, AJ Mantech, you are the best in the world. Ha ha ha, let's go. So that's essentially all it does. Comment 1, add comment 2, add comment 3, add. So you'll see as comments roll in, the latest comment is added to the top. So you can just add any comment that you want or remove it, add, remove. So basically it's a way for you to talk to your viewers in a more personal way. It's so much better than just having all chat messages on screen, because some messages you don't necessarily want to respond to like that, but some you do. So now that you have an idea of what my extension does, let's take a closer look at the code. So we'll start with the index.html file like the examples. You'll see there's just a little bit more going on. I'm referencing two style sheets. One is Bootstrap 3.4.1 and a local style sheet. In the body, there's just a couple of elements. One, I have an unordered list called comment and then a div called That's just where I catch errors if I want to see them, otherwise they're hidden. And all the scripts. So I'm referencing a couple of jQuery scripts. One is jQuery 3.2.1 and then a jQuery extension called jQuery templates. After that, I'm referencing the XSplit JS Framework itself. And then finally, my select a chat extension JS file, which is here locally, and you'll see that here in a bit. Below that, you'll see this template. So this actually corresponds to this jQuery template plugin. What this allows me to do is bind a data model to some HTML so I can just continually add it to the screen. I'll show you a little bit more about that data model here in a second. This is basically where all the magic happens. I'm using a mix of vanilla JavaScript and jQuery to make this happen, so it's not too complicated. We are using local storage, which is kind of like a database for your browser. Then we set an interval that executes every second and a half, every 1500 milliseconds, and it executes this get YouTube comments function. Inside of that function is a single AJAX web request. We set the URL to the pop out of the live chat. This is exactly what's returned when we execute this web request. As I get further along in development of this extension, the video ID will become a property in the extension's property window. But for now, you have to change the video ID in code. Next, we set the method to HTTP GET. Then if results are successfully returned, we need to parse the returned JSON object. Little FYI about how YouTube chat actually works. YouTube sends a big JSON object to your browser, and then with that JSON object creates the text that you see on screen. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically taking apart that JSON object because it has a lot more information in it than just the chat. Then I construct my own JSON object consisting of only the chat messages. Then after that object is constructed, then we iterate through all the returned chat messages. So the first thing I do is check to see if it's a new chat message, because this is a little bit hacky because I'm actually scraping the YouTube chat. I'm not using the YouTube API. Not yet. Eventually we will. So I check to see if it's a new chat message or not. If it is a new chat message, then we go ahead and extract information like the username, the user image, the actual message. Then we construct a new object called comment. Then I call an add comment function, which adds that comment to the top of the list. Remember here, whenever I add a new comment, you'll see it pop up at the top. So new comment. Boop, new comment. There we go. So that is what this does, and this is just a little bit of jQuery using the jQuery template extension, as you can tell. Finally, we add that comment object to local storage, to our own little local database. The data model that's bound to the extension template consists of user image, username, comment ID, and of course the body content itself. Comment itself. For the plus and minus buttons, I add on-click event handlers. So for the plus button, it's write current, which when we put this there, it grabs the value of the button. So that's why we add the comment ID to the value of the button. Then on the minus button, we add the remove current. Write current adds the comment ID to the local storage in a field called current. Likewise, remove current removes that field. And that is all that this extension does, the select a chat extension. Now, how do we get it to show up on the screen? Because the extension can't do that. That's where the source comes in. So let's take a look at the source. Again, we'll start with the HTML file. Similarly, I'm referencing Bootstrap 3 and my own style sheet with a single div called MSG. Below that, referencing nearly the same script files. Likewise, I am using the same templating engine for the content of the comment that you actually see on stream, just with a little bit different data model. Because here, I only need to show it. I don't need the comment ID. Now let's take a look at the JavaScript file for the source. Of course, this is where all the magic happens. And we start with instantiating an object of the XJS framework, then waiting until it's ready. After it's ready, I changed the name of the source to select a chat. If you remember back from when I showed you the example of how to create your first source, you'll notice that the name of the source was a big, long, ugly file URL. So you actually have to use the XJS framework to change that name. Then we add an event listener. Now in this case, we're not listening for a stream start or stream end event. We're actually listening for changes to the local storage. So we're listening for changes to the database of comments that we've been constructing through the extension. And if a change is detected in the current field, which remember the current field only has a value if I've selected the plus button, that would be a comment that I just said I want to show on screen, right? The comment ID. So if there's a value in current, we reset the source, which is basically we just make sure to remove any existing comment. That's so you can flip between comments. And we grab the value of the current field in local storage. Then we go and look for the comment based on the current value. Finally, we call add comment. Add comment simply instantiates a JSON object out of the string we just passed into it and appends it to the DOM, which results in, when I click the add button, the ID of this comment is added to the current field. Then my source plugin detects a change in the current value and displays that comment. So these two components, the extension and the source here, are actually disconnected. But through the magic of simple web development, I was able to make a comment that scrapes YouTube chat messages and allows me to show the ones that I want to on screen. And that, my friends, is my XSplit extension and source. Again, GitHub repo is linked below. Game strong. Boom. See you in the next one. Peace.